Hi everyone and welcome to KearCar Studios. My name's Carl and today we're going to be talking about emotions and how to process them properly. Now, I don't really know a lot about that sort of stuff. I'm a little bit crazy myself. So we fortunately have Billee here from B.Conscious and she's going to guide us through a little bit. It's basically just a bit of a discussion as to how we can become better humans. But to explain a little bit more, Billee, what is it that you do?
Right, so yes, I'm Billee from B.Conscious. Hello everyone. My whole jam really is about...
Strawberry?
No, I prefer raspberry. But it's about teaching people how to be more human and really embrace their humanness, which is learning to be with the whole myriad of emotions that we can feel in our human experience.
Oh, that's a pretty small topic, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it's quite vast, but we'll break it down a little bit today.
Yeah, awesome. And so, I know that as a, Kiwi male in New Zealand, we're not really taught, well, actually any person really, we're not really taught how to deal with emotions. Is that what you experience and find a lot?
Yeah, definitely. So I do agree, we're not really taught how to deal with or process our emotions effectively. It comes down to really how your parents and were taught to do it and their ability to actually hold and process their emotions. We go with what we are modelled to use. So our behaviour will be based on what was modelled to us. So if our parents weren't able to hold their emotions, then it will be really hard for us too. Also, it will come from conditioning in society. So there's a lot of that attitude of suck it up, get over it, move on, just kind of teaching us to push everything aside, and that we have to be strong is to kind of bury all of the things that we're feeling and just keep going.
Well, that's definitely my experience. I was kind of taught to be stoic was to be powerful.
Yeah, it's particularly damaging for men. It's much stronger for men to be seen to just carry on, move through it, don't feel anything, because there's the stigma also through society that if you are feeling anything other than sort of happiness, joy, elation, lightness in your life, then you are weak. So we're sort of taught, and particularly men, that if they're to feel anything that is less desirable, so shame, loneliness, sadness, that they're actually weak. And that's a really, really damaging stigma that we have. It is shifting, but slowly, so we need to be really vigilant with making change as to how we actually deal with emotion and process emotion and learn how to do it.
Yeah, well, that would be, especially, it's, I suppose, coming back to that adage of, what are the things that school teaches you versus what are the things that you learn at home. And quite often, I saw that funny meme the other day.
Yeah, I just thought of that. I'm glad I learned all about parallelograms. It's going to come in really handy this parallelogram season.
Who needs tax?
Yeah. So it's the same with emotions and not, and as you know, it is becoming more of something that's being brought into schools. From what I understand, their health education is now sort of encompassing more of emotional processing, but it's in its infancy, so it's only just starting to come through now. And for generations that didn't get that in school and who had parents who also didn't learn and learnt ways of coping rather than actually dealing with and processing emotions, then that gets passed on. And
that's a really good wording you use. Coping mechanisms, because that's always what I always heard. Coping. Oh, you got to establish some coping mechanisms.
Yeah, and they really come in. Coping mechanisms come in when you are finding it really difficult. There's a huge overwhelm with some of the emotions that you haven't been able to hold or process. So we go to things that will make us feel better in the short term and maybe mask what's actually going on underneath. So you might be turning to food or alcoholism. That's where a lot of addiction comes through. So the idea is that really if we can swing it around and start to learn how to hold the less desirable emotions, because really, there's desirable emotions, the great things that feel, happiness and delight and joy and love, and then there are less desirable emotions like fear, shame, loneliness, all of those, sadness, anger, frustration. So if we can, but they're all part of the human experience. It's the whole. We want to be able to feel everything that is available within our sphere, because we are human. Part of our humanness is that we are sensory beings, that we can see, touch, taste, and feel. So being able to have capacity and the skills to actually feel all of the things, then that will leave us feeling more whole and more connected to who we are, and just a lot more free.
Yeah, no, that really makes a lot of sense. It seems like quite often we think about a lot of things though as well. So, especially in Western philosophy, we have psychologists and we can really understand a lot, but from my understanding, emotions, sometimes you can understand why you're sad, but that doesn't help you with the sadness. You can understand why you're stressed, but that doesn't help with the stress. What would you give that advice to people and the clarity as to the distinction?
So I work a lot with using the body to process emotions, which I'll get to in a moment, but this just made me think of this, a couple of things that can be very detrimental to just our overall well-being. And one of those things is toxic positivity, where you adopt a positive facade, essentially, to think yourself into not feeling the underlying emotion that's there. So if you're sad, rather than going, I'm sad, okay, that sucks, now what do I do with that? Going, no, not sad, only positive vibes are welcome, I will just move forward like a positive little robot this way, only positive vibes, and you don't allow any of that sadness to come through. You believe that only thinking positive vibes will somehow go to that sadness and think it away, which is really detrimental, because it's just masking. It's masking what is truly there. And I talk about emotions like being a dust ball under the couch. The dust ball under the couch is the sadness, and if you don't sweep it out, it's not actually going to just dissipate one day. It will get bigger until it's leaching out from under the couch and you can't shove it back in under there anymore. So just thinking yourself away from your feelings is not going to work. And the other thing that we do is judge ourselves. So
just going back into that first one, that toxic positivity, because that goes, what we're saying here is there's quite a lot of contradictory information surrounding this. And you get a lot of people saying, oh well, like attracts like. So if you draw your thoughts towards happy thoughts, then you're going to be happy. What would you say in that?
That you really, and this is a big thing with the law of attraction, if you want to put it that way, is if the feeling lying underneath the thought is not in alignment, then none of that's going to work. It's empty. It's not going to work. So you simply have to address the feeling and actually release that before you can then actually start to think more positively. There is you can use positive affirmation to help you to work through an underlying feeling, but the feeling has to be addressed first. So you have to address that sadness first by feeling into it, and then you can start to choose your way forward out of that sadness. So then you can start to go, I feel the sadness, but I choose from now that I will bring more love and light into my life, or whatever you want to put it, something that resonates with you for the particular situation. But if you just have that underlying feeling and you're telling yourself that it's going to be some way else because you're being positive, there's a big disconnect, there's a misalignment, and it's just not going to shift anything.
No, that makes sense. So you're more working with the brain rather than the brain solely.
Yeah, because we are not just the brain. We are so much more than that, and the body offers a place for us to really feel everything else that's not just a thought.
That's a really interesting way about it. Instead of, and paraphrasing here, it's really instead of just accessing those emotions through your mind, you're accessing those emotions through your body.
Yeah, that's definitely how I work with people to move through things, because you've got the mind is a great tool, but it's not, we want it to be a tool that you use rather than be
you're a tool.
rather than be the thing that's driving your bus.
Yeah.
You've got a whole
the synergy.
being. Yeah, that to really.
That's pretty much what Kia Kaha is about as well.
It is, mind, body, spirit, soul.
Yeah. And this one's Lily, by the way. She's going to be bouncing around. She's a little vibration dog.
Every emotion she has is expressed with shaking.
Yeah, and that's a good body.
It is a good embodied way of expressing and releasing.
The pent up. I'm so excited. So you were saying one of the things was toxic positivity.
Yeah.
And another one was?
So the judgment that we bring in towards ourselves as to whether we should or shouldn't feel a certain way. So you might have a situation where your boyfriend breaks up with you and he gives you all his explanation. You're like, look, I get that. I can rationally see your reasoning. And, you might respect even the way it's been done. But there's still an underlying feeling of hurt and a sense of grief. But you might feel that because you understand his reasoning, you can respect that should somehow make your feelings of hurt and grief null and void. Like, you shouldn't feel those because you understand why this has all happened. So you should then just be like, oh, well, it's okay, I understand why, so I should just get on with things and move forward. But you've got to address whether you deem your feelings to be right or wrong, or that you should or shouldn't have them. The thing is that they are there. Feelings have a viscous, tangible sensation, right? So they have to be dealt with, they have to be addressed before they can sort of dissipate and shift. Again, you can't just think yourself out of something just because you're judging that you should or shouldn't feel it.
Yeah, that thinking as well would really disconnect you from the actual feeling as well.
Yeah.
Kind of, I suppose, quite often we hear I'll just push it into that dark hole.
Cram it down.
Yeah.
And that's why we do yin yoga, so that we can get right into your hips and release all that shit you press down into there.
Although what?
Stuff.
Yeah. And
thanks, God. So the judgment is a really big thing, whether you're judging yourself. It also creates internal stress. So the amount of energy that it requires to ignore or avoid or distract yourself from feeling something is immense, because it's there. And I always use the analogy of say you're standing there and you've got this little 2-year-old and it's beside you and it's going, hello, excuse me, and you ignore it, and that child is just going to get louder and louder and louder, trying to get your attention, have a full-blown tantrum if you don't address this child. But if you simply looked at the child and said, what is it? And they said, flower. And you're like, oh, great. It's that the amount of energy that it takes to kind of squash that emotion, which is like that child that's trying to get your attention. The more you squash it, the more it wants to get your attention. That's just pulling so much of your daily energy out of your quota of energy. We have this kind of amount of chi, and we send it out to so many things, and we call them energy leaks. So there's this leak of energy going to stop that emotion from taking over, and most of us will probably experience it. The more that we try to push those emotions away and not feel them, the harder it gets to do that. And it will just start to get harder and harder until you feel kind of, more and more weak in your energy body. You just can't hold that battle anymore.
Yeah, like a quote that I really resonate with is, when you're tired in a place that sleep can't reach.
Yeah, and that's directly addressing internal stress. So that's that, not stress from something outside of your control happening, but the internal stuff that's created by you not being in alignment with a feeling and a thought.
And I think that especially as you age, like each one of these independently might not be big enough to fill up your bag, but
baggage.
Yeah, I'm going in towards the baggage.
Yeah.
So, but if you think about traveling with your baggage on a holiday, you don't want it filled up full of, those annoying little things you're never going to use.
No.
You're just going to end up having a really difficult time on the planes. Shout out to the pre-COVID times.
Back when planes were a thing.
But so and then ultimately all you have in your baggage would be these undigested, unprocessed emotions.
Yeah, you literally just carry it all around with you, which, my God,
So
which
how
makes me tired thinking about the whole analogy. Yeah.
So what's the sort of what advice would you give to people as to how they can actually access these emotions?
Well, it's really important firstly to understand that it's actually okay to feel like it's okay. We often, with all the judgment or the societal conditioning or the learning we get from our parents, we're like, oh no, it's not okay to feel that, so therefore I won't, and I'll bring in some toxic positivity to get me going. But actually understanding that it is okay to feel. It is to feel everything. So I say to my clients, all is welcome, all of it. We've got to allow and welcome the whole expression of the human experience, because that is the fullness and the wholeness of what it is to be human, right? So that's the first thing, is to know that it's okay to feel. And that's how we also change all of those stigmas that are so unhealthy and creating so much dis-ease within all of us out there. The second thing would be to be really honest with yourself. Part of the ability to heal and feel the emotion that's really wanting your attention is to be honest with yourself that it's there. Because often we're like, no, I shouldn't feel that way, so I don't feel that way. And there might be shame in feeling that way. There might be fear in feeling the feeling. Other things can come in. So really being honest that you do actually feel sad or angry about the situation. And then the next thing would be to release the judgment of that, because you might think, well, I'm not entitled to feel sad about this situation, therefore I shouldn't.
Well, like other people have it worse.
Yeah, that's a big one. Like, oh, this person, there's plenty of people in the world that are struggling far more than me, so I should just count my lucky stars that I'm not them, and therefore that somehow makes that go away. It doesn't. It's all relative to your experience. The way you feel is relative to you, not anyone else. And that's part of how we all are just being individual expressions of humanness. We need all of those kind of variants of experience. So and then acknowledging that you do feel that way. So releasing the judgment of feeling a certain way. If you're feeling sad and you don't feel like you should, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. It's there. The only way to get through it is literally to go through the emotion. And you can't go around it or over it or under it or pack it into the cupboard. Like, you have to go go through it. And then acknowledging that it's there, so it's kind of all tied in, the honesty with yourself, the releasing the judgment, and acknowledging the emotion. And that will kind of just diffuse quite a lot of its power. These emotions that are not processed, they hold a lot of power over us because they're pulling that energy out of us to keep them at bay or keep them pushed down. So that in itself, kind of there's a peacefulness that comes with just being able to see it and go, you know what, this is really crap, but I just actually do feel this way, whether it's right or wrong or whatever in my mind, it just is. And then there's like this, oh thank God, I can let go of that battle that I was fighting to keep it pushed down. And then the next part to actually holding it and feeling it is where I would really invite you to get some help, because when you're not practiced at it and when you're not taught about how to do it, it's hard because
I would even say you're taught to do the opposite.
Yeah.
Because like I've done a couple of these processes with Billee, and it I can't quite do it. It always sometimes feel that sadness or that grief or that shame, and you're like, it's like grabbing fog.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm so used to just
to not feeling
distancing.
Yeah.
That it goes against all that I am
100%.
To be able to go, let it wash through me.
Yeah. So it's really beneficial if you can have even a good friend who can be with you so that you're not facing it on your own is really amazing, or you can get professional guidance. But just remembering that there is likely to be, because like Carl said, we're taught exactly the opposite, to not feel those feelings. So there is likely to be fear around actually feeling the feelings, not just because of the fact that we're taught not to, but also because we feel like we might get stuck there. That we'll just get stuck and just kind of wallow around in that sadness or get really angry, and then what do we do with that? Go and rage somewhere. So the best way to not get stuck in that is to practice curiosity, which is something I teach my clients too, which is amazing. So the practice of curiosity is to bring in to your awareness a sense of, how curious that I feel so angry about this thing, because it releases judgment, and then it creates a little bit of space between you, that deeper part of you as awareness, and the actual emotion, so that it's not all that you are. The mind doesn't take over. There's this nice little kind of viewing platform where you can be like,
so
what is this? How interesting.
So it's along the lines of, I'm not upset, I'm experiencing some upset.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. I'm experiencing some sadness right now. I'm experiencing some anger.
Yeah, so I'm not angry.
It's not all that you are, it's not all encompassing, but you still will feel it. You will definitely still feel it. And ways to kind of... Ways to bring in the ability to do this is meditation practice, because meditation, it deepens your layers of awareness. So you do start to understand that you are more than just the thinking mind, and you are more than just the body, that you are the awareness that can hold all of these things in your experience. And also starting to practice compassion, because
I am my biggest critic.
Right, and we all are. We're taught also to be that way, to judge ourselves so harshly, and the language that we use with ourselves can be so horrible. You wouldn't use it with your best friend, but you use it with yourself, and usually we're completely unaware of it. But the practice of compassion is to have that compassion for yourself, to say to yourself, when I'm feeling this anger, you know what, it's actually okay. I see you feeling this anger, and it's okay. So you're backing yourself. You've got yourself, and you're not judging yourself, but you're actually going, you know what, it's okay. I'm feeling that compassion for myself holding this anger. And when you bring in that compassion, it's like this soothing feeling that can really help you to hold the things that are less desirable. So that helps as well.
No, that's really interesting because
Good girl.
she just always wants attention. No, and so that's a really good way, because quite often I definitely know that as soon as I start to judge myself based on what other people are doing, or even my own personally viewed failings or shortcomings, then it really seems to stop a lot of the learning.
Yeah.
And another thing that, and I always encourage with, no matter what it is that you're learning, I always think that it's the Mr. Miyagi principle. You know, you need to do your own practice. You need to, like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But if you were to just do your own practice, it's like standing in the middle of fog and not knowing which way to walk, and so you end up doing a lot of loops and circles, whereas if you just had a guide to go, hey, start walking that way, and then Mr. Miyagi pops up a little bit later and goes, oh, you're steering clear, you're slightly off track, steer this way.
Yeah.
And then you learn to wax on, wax off.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, a guide is a good thing because a practitioner will be able to see what you can't see. And
that's where you're getting into some scars.
Yeah. Okay, so the tantric yogic principle for what we've just been speaking about, basically samskaras and vikalpas. So a samskara is an emotionally charged event that has taken place in your life, and it may have caused trauma for you, or it may just be something that you just haven't digested. So say in the event, maybe you've had a car accident and there was some adrenaline and some fear and some shock at that time, which you weren't able to process at that time, and then later on you've come out of that and you're like, no, I'm okay, I'll just take some toxic positivity and I'll move forward this way, and because I can't feel that way because of all this, and you push it down. But there's all of this shock, residual adrenaline, all of that didn't get diffused or processed. So that creates the samskara, which is the energetic imprint of that event in your life. Then the vikalpa comes into it. It's the story that we create to explain what has happened to us. So you might then decide driving is too scary. So you create a story that everyone's a terrible driver, so it's just not safe for you to drive anymore. So then you've created this story that explains the event so that you don't have to digest it. The story will usually put the blame onto others so that you feel safe and you're not having to feel into those feelings. And then you'll live through that. That person then might not drive for the rest of their life because they've deemed other drivers are terrible.
And that creates a pattern of behaviour.
Yeah. And we have lots of these throughout our life that we kind of live through those stories. Yeah.
And one of the things that I really love about what you do is that you really tie in a lot of Western neuroscience as well as Eastern philosophy, because they're all basically saying the same thing, but just in a different language.
Yeah, totally. So I love the Western aspects of the teachings of the nervous system and really learning all about physiology and the way that it actually is so intrinsic to our lived experience, depending on what our nervous system is doing. And then the Eastern philosophy comes in and actually teaches you an embodied way to release and deal with those emotions.
And they merge.
It's a
They're
really
not
beautiful
two different
marriage
things.
of modalities.
So that's, so I really like how that Eastern and Western philosophies really merge in together. And you've got the B.Conscious way, isn't it? And it's what? Be conscious.
Be conscious, be curious, be courageous, be you.
And each of those stages guides you through that practice.
Yeah. So it's basically teaching you how to be the best human that you can be, and in the full experience of being human, and to find wholeness rather than all of the separation and contraction that we create for ourselves by pushing away things and not feeling all the things, creating disconnection and energy leaks and feeling just like all the time. So it teaches you how to really be aware of the things that you might not see, and how to cultivate awareness, and then practice curiosity in your life. And then there is some courage that comes into actually confronting some of those emotions, and to cultivate that courage is a really powerful thing, and it really does bring you back into your power, because anything that you don't address, anything that's unresolved, unprocessed emotionally wise, it's taking away your power in terms of energy, and feeling like yourself, feeling whole. So to bring that power back from all of those things and have it just sitting in your center, and feeling like you've got the tools to do life and to do this human experience thing, which is like the hardest thing you'll ever do. So that's what I'm really passionate about. And then you can just be you, and then just freedom.
And one of the things that I obviously deal with the body a lot more, having Pilates and personal training, but in guiding people in things like weight loss or injury prevention, injury recovery, and dealing with a lot of those, quite often it's to be able to achieve the goals physically that we want to achieve. Quite often we need to deal first with that root difficulties. So for anyone out there who finds all this sort of stuff interesting and doesn't think that, if you've listened to now, you're probably finding it pretty interesting. Blah, blah, blah. What sort of advice would you have?
Start seeking out your sort of, just follow that path of interest, and I'd recommend starting a meditation practice, because that is really what is going to bring you home to yourself and create sort of that safe center that you can always come home to. And then just sort of have a play with working and with emotions. If you can bring in some compassion, and just say you can try just a small event. It might be just you had an argument with someone at work and you're like, I didn't process that at the time, but I'll have a go with it later. You just bring it in, be like, I was actually really angry about that comment that person made, and then bringing in some compassion for yourself, that it's actually okay to feel that way. Let's just feel it, and then see, it might just dissipate. And then if you're feeling like things are sticky and they're not shifting, then that's when I would say come and get some help. I can help.
Yeah, actually that's a really good other thing. Like, feel free, comment down below, ask any of the questions. We'll do our best to sort of answer as much as we can. But yeah, that's very enlightening.
Awesome.
And thank you very much for taking the time out to come share the wealth of emotional journey.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. And if you've got any questions, please comment below, like a video, and yeah, see you around. Kia kaha.